first question we ask any audience is, by a show of hands, how many people remember hearing and watching John Dean give testimony before the Senate?
Everybody over 50.
Yeah.
We see.
You've now told us your age. People, remember this. It is his testimony before the Senate, as we'll get into, was one of the most watched events in American history. You have the Kennedy assassination, the moon landing, and John Dean's testimony. Then he wrote 11 books. All of them are great books, but I can tell you, after listening to John Barrett yesterday, who is one of my favorites, best book for you to read on Supreme Court picks is John's book called The Rehnquist Choice. It's a really fine book, and it's taken from the tapes. Nixon almost appointed a woman named Mildred Lilly. John was vetting the candidates at the time. It's a wonderful book, a wonderful story, and both flattering and unflattering.
Did about an hour interview with the head of the Jackson Foundation here, because Jackson, needless to say, was an important factor in Bill Rehnquist's life, and I was happy to contribute my insights into some of the controversy that surrounded that when Rehnquist would try to portray his former mentor in a little different light than history has otherwise got him. If any of you know what I'm talking about, it was the memo that Rehnquist wrote that came up during his confirmation hearing, which he attributed to really Jackson's position that was very much anti-Brown versus Board of Education. And starting with Jackson's secretary right on down to anybody who knew the former justice, they said this was not Jackson's position, this was Bill Rehnquist's position.
Ultimately, you come to the name of William Rehnquist, and it seems like in the book between you and Dick Moore, sort of advanced that cause with Nixon.
We did.
I see President Nixon talked about it in some of his tapes, but the connect between Rehnquist and Jackson seemed to be a positive.
Oh, very much. Nixon is very impressed with Jackson. By Nixon's standard, Jackson is the kind of person that he thinks brings life experience to the court, and indeed did. So yes, you read that in the tapes correctly. He has this is probably while they thought he was number 2 in his class, apparently Stanford doesn't really rank anybody, but everybody assumes that Bill was number 1 in his class. Ehrlichman, who was one of his classmates, said they don't rank him in class, but it was close enough to the top that Rehnquist impressed Nixon. But as I say, I think the Jackson connection is the tilt that got him the seat.
Mm-hmm. And ironically, it was the Jackson seat.
It was, exactly.
Jackson, Harlan. By the way, just as an aside, I should ask John Dean what John Dean thinks about Robert Jackson.
Greatly admired. He's everything I read the Barrett blog and look forward to the full manuscript because he's a fascinating historical figure, not just as a justice, but even his whole relationship with FDR and career as a lawyer is really a rather interesting time. So you've got a nice niche to be looking and making sure we don't forget that life.